This week in Cincinnati, the race for the U.S. Senate in Ohio.
You don't give 80% of tax breaks to the 1% and then go right at the middle class and say, okay, it's time to pay for it.
Do you have any second thoughts about anything in the tax cut?
Well, I wish we could have done better, and I wish we could make it permanent.
Our in-depth interviews with both candidates on issues from health care to the economy to Russia. That's next on This Week in Cincinnati.
The people, the headlines, the issues impacting you and your family. This Week in Cincinnati on 9 on Your Side.
Good afternoon and welcome to This Week in Cincinnati. I'm Craig McKee. Today, we're actually taking a look at the U.S. Senate race in Ohio. That contest pits incumbent Democrat Sherrod Brown against Republican Congressman Jim Renacci. Both are experienced hands in Washington. Renacci was elected to Congress in 2010. Sherrod Brown was elected to the Senate in 2006. Now, today, you're going to hear from both men. 9 on Your Side has conducted extensive interviews with them over the past few weeks. First up, Sherrod Brown. 9 on Your Side anchor Julie O'Neill spoke with him.
Voters make comparisons, they make contrasts, and I think one of the biggest contrasts in this race is the health care issue that Congressman Renacci has voted repeatedly to repeal the Affordable Care Act, undo Governor Kasich's Medicaid expansion, allow insurance companies to deny coverage because of pre-existing condition. And I've been very much on the other side of that, fighting for people's health care, fighting to keep drug prices down. A big part of that is that big part of health care inflation is drug prices going up and up and up and up. And frankly, you go to the White House looks like a retreat for pharmaceutical executives, and the power the power the drug industry has in Congress. And I'm not going to make this personal, but my opponent is part of that swamp, where drug companies have so much power in Congress, and that's one reason drug prices stay so high.
What about on the economy? What's the big divider between you and
the difference, I think, is I believe, and I'll let him speak for himself, of course, but I believe you grow the economy from the middle out. You don't give tax cuts to the rich and to large corporations that move jobs overseas. You give the tax cuts to the middle class. And and when you do tax cuts for the rich, little of it trickles down. When you focus on the middle class, you build the economy out. You know, there's been economic growth now for every month for 10 years. We've seen job increases every month for 10 years. A little more slowly now than the end of the Obama years, but that's just quibbling. But the fact is wages are not going up enough because profits are up, executive compensation's exploded. But job growth isn't strong enough, and wage increases are pretty much non-existent, and that's where our focus needs to be.
So, for those, I mean, the middle class did get a bit of a tax cut, but then that now affects the deficit and debt. Was that a good idea?
80% of the tax cut went to the richest 1%. As soon as that tax cut was signed, Republican leaders started talking about raising the eligibility age of Medicare and the retirement age for Social Security in order to pay for the tax cut. And you don't give 80% of tax breaks to the 1% and then go right at the middle class and say, okay, it's time to pay for it. And that's what this Congress did. The
trade war in China. This is growing. You have kind of aligned with the president where it comes to steel. Where is all of this now? Where do you see things headed? How much do you align with what the president is calling for in terms of tariffs, and where do you differ?
You know, I support the tariffs. I start with this. This didn't begin with President Trump. It began long before, when the two common business plan in for many corporations in the United States was shut down production in Cincinnati or Springfield or Middletown and move it overseas and get a tax break and sell those products back into the United States. So this is going to, the point of the tariffs, it's not a policy. The tariffs are a temporary strategy to get China to the table to change some of these international trade laws. My disagreement on it with the president is he's not laid out any kind of a plan on how we get to where we need to get. And of course, I'm concerned about what these tariffs are meaning to the supply chain and what they mean particularly to farmers and to the price of goods. That's why the president needs to lay out a real plan on where these temporary strategic tariffs are going to where they end up and how they improve our economy.
Where do you want to see things go? Because you have the steel, and then you have everything else that gets mixed in. You have China saying we'll retaliate if you do this. Yeah. So it goes back and forth.
China's always going to say that. China's been cheating. I mean, to me, a week after the candidate Trump was elected, I wrote him a letter and I said I will support your trade policies if I understand what they are, and I said but don't play off agriculture against industry, don't play off steel workers against farmers or other auto workers or others. And I don't know that I think he's done that a little more than he should have. He needs to focus on those countries that have cheated, like China, like South Korea, like Turkey, and not on our friends like Canada in Western Europe. So I still support the tariffs. He needs a plan to show the American people how this ends and what the purpose of using this as a strategy is.
When it comes to Putin, when it comes to Kim Jong-un, the atrocities that we know that they are responsible for, and all of the negatives, and also the understanding that you have to deal with this person who wields power. On some level, do you have an understanding of why President Trump may say certain things to Putin or Kim Jong-un that sound friendly for the sake of moving negotiations forward, well, making things safer?
Perhaps. I saw the President of the United States in Helsinki side with Putin over his own intelligence people, and I saw John McCain's response and Rob Portman's response and so many others that's just not acceptable in our country. On Korea, I met last week with Fred Warmbier again for the many, many times. I am working on a Russia sanctions and a Korea sanctions bill together. We are naming the bill. I convinced my colleagues, not hard to do, to name the bill after Otto. The White House has not yet supported the bill. I'm hopeful that Fred and Cindy and their conversations with the president can get the president to support it, because we need the Koreans to know that what they did was worse than unacceptable, and we need the North Koreans to understand that we continue to squeeze them we continue to squeeze them economically if they continue to act this way in the world stage, whether it's murdering an American or whether it's threatening us with their nuclear weapons.
Should Robert Mueller wait till after November 6th to release findings, if we get them before then?
I'm not a lawyer. I don't have an opinion on how Mueller does his job.
Just politically, would it be better to wait if he doesn't?
I don't think he should make political decisions. I think he's a Republican. He was appointed by Republicans. He's not on a witch hunt. He'd be in a witch hunt of Democrats if he was on a witch hunt, and he's doing his job. And the investigation of all the investigations the Republicans did of Hillary Clinton and of Bill Clinton and everything else took way longer than this. Mueller's got to do his job. He needs enough time to do it.
When we come back, my interview with Senator Brown's opponent, Republican Congressman Jim Renacci.
The people, the headlines, the issues impacting you, all on This Week in Cincinnati on 9 on Your Side.